CBS has linked Tyreek Hill as a potential trade target for the Washington Commanders. We'll talk about that at the top of today's edition of the Commanders Report. And then a new article lists 5 free agency targets for the Commanders to consider before the start of training camp in late July. Before we get into the content today, guys, we are so close to hitting our goal for the month of June, which is to get to 42,000 subscribers by the end of this month. We are less than 100 subscribers away from getting there, guys. So I'm going to do a shameless plug right now. If you guys love Commanders content, you guys want it for free every single day, I'm going to implore you guys to click that subscribe button. And new viewers, we are counting on you guys. I know that every YouTuber out there asks you to click that subscribe button, but if you guys love Commanders content, you want it every single day for free, we are currently the largest individually run Commanders news program anywhere on YouTube, so make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already for daily updates on the Burgundy and Gold. So let's start here with the cheetah himself, Tyreek Hill, where CBS Sports' Cody Benjamin has thrown out the idea in a recent article that the Washington Commanders could potentially trade for Tyreek Hill to add to this wide receiver room, which of course includes Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel, with Jaden Daniels throwing him the ball. This is what Cody had to say in his article. Hill repeatedly teased his desire to split from the Miami Dolphins after the 2024 season, and Washington had plenty of salary cap space to invite his elite speed. Can you imagine Daniels airing it out to both the Cheetah and Terry McLaurin in 2025? Well, when it comes to Tyreek Hill, guys, he is getting older. He's 31 years old. I think he took a little bit of a step back last year. Still think he's one of the best receivers in the National Football League, and what he's known for, obviously, is his speed. He's an excellent route runner. He's a great yak threat. He's a vertical threat. There's a lot of things that Tyreek Hill brings to the table, and if the Commanders end up trading for him, the cap hit is actually not that much because of the signing bonus that Tyreek signed with the Dolphins and then a restructure that he signed with the Dolphins as well. The Commanders would only be on the hook for about $15 million against the cap, which this team can afford. And he's got 2 years left on his deal, so if you make this trade, Tyreek Hill is a Commander for the next 2 seasons. Take a look at his numbers here over the last several years with Miami and then, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, he's consistently over 1,000 yards. Didn't get there last year. Obviously, they had some quarterback issues in Miami last year with guys like Tyler Huntley throwing him the football at times in 2024, but he still put up 6 touchdowns, and of course that 2023 season was just insane. At some points during that year, it looked like he might eclipse 2,000 yards receiving, which is just absolutely insane, but he's still a very good wide receiver, and I have nothing against Tyreek Hill, but I do think that the Washington Commanders are probably good with where their wide receiver room is right now. This was one of the most explosive offenses in the National Football League last year, and that was without Deebo Samuel, who they are bringing in here, and he has led the NFL in yards after the catch per reception over the last 5 years. So filling that kind of gadget receiver role in Cliff Kingsbury's very creative offensive scheme is going to be a really great compliment, I think, to Terry McLaurin, who is a legit number 1 alpha type wide receiver, and like we've talked about extensively on this show, I'm not worried about the Commanders and McLaurin coming to terms on a long-term extension before the start of the season. And then Noah Brown is perfectly fine. He showed some really good things last year, showed a good amount of chemistry with Jaden Daniels in this offense. So I don't think that the Commanders necessarily need to add a Tyreek Hill. And I do think if the Commanders are going to trade for anyone else this offseason, it's got to be at the edge rusher position. I think the only guy left that I think actually has a chance to be traded, sorry if you want TJ Watt, but I think the guy that's the most likely to be traded of the guys that are worth trading for, that's Trey Hendrickson of the Cincinnati Bengals. And if the Commanders can still get that deal done, I would be willing to trade some more draft assets in the future to get Trey Hendrickson. But the reality of the situation here, guys, is that unless you're getting like the NFL sack leader, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the Commanders to trade for another piece because you don't have a lot of draft assets heading into the 2026 offseason. All right, you only have 2 picks in the first 4 rounds of the NFL draft next year, and if you trade one of those away for Tyreek Hill, you only have 1 pick in the top 4 rounds of the NFL draft next year. That is not something that I am willing to part ways with. I want to continue to restock this roster throughout these years with young talent, and if you give away either that round 1 or round 3 pick without doing a pick swap, you're left with just 1 pick in the first 4 rounds next year, and that's not something that I want. Something that the Commanders could do if they really want Tyreek Hill is they could flip draft picks next year. So essentially, they get a second-round pick from Miami in exchange for their first-rounder next year. That might make sense because I think the Commanders' first-round pick might be a later first-round pick. Miami's second-round pick might be a little bit higher, so I like that swap there. Also, you have the same amount of picks after the trade as before it. And then you could swap Noah Brown for Tyreek Hill, because if you're adding Tyreek to this offense, Noah Brown is going to be pretty much delegated to backup duties anyway. The Dolphins would probably want a receiver to replace Tyreek Hill, even though Noah Brown is nowhere near Tyreek Hill. He's still a starting capable wide receiver that they might be interested in a swap if this was to happen. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Would you accept this trade to add the cheetah to the Commanders offense? Type A for accept or D for decline. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Fanatics. And while I'm talking about Fanatics today, give me an A for accept or D for decline. Now let's talk about our sponsor today at Fanatics. And if you guys want to represent your country while also representing your favorite NFL team during the 4th of July barbecue this year, you can get this Americana t-shirt from our friends at Fanatics. It says Washington Commanders there. It's got the American flag on there. So if you want to represent the Burgundy and Gold and the Stars and Stripes at the same time, you guys can go chatsports.com/WASUSA. That link is in the comments and description of today's show. Another added benefit here, guys, is that it helps out the channel. Every time someone makes a purchase after clicking that link, chatsports.com/WASUSA, then Fanatics is going to send us part of the proceeds. So it's good news for us because we get a little bit of extra money to help keep the lights on, pay for rent, do all the things we need to do to keep this content free for you guys here on YouTube. And then you guys win because you get that t-shirt that's at a great price from our friends at Fanatics today. So again, chatsports.com/WASUSA to get that t-shirt. Really do appreciate all of your guys' support. So now let's shift over to the second topic of today's show, which is Riggo's Rags. Dean Jones has listed out 5 players that the Commanders could sign before the start of training camp. If you guys don't know, Riggo's Rag is a website covering all things Washington Commanders, just so you guys know. But the first one that he brings up here is DeMarcus Walker, the edge rusher. Has quite a bit to say about Walker and specifically the need at the edge rusher position for the Washington Commanders. This is what Dean had to say about this potential pairing. It's no secret that Washington Commanders fans are extremely concerned about the defensive edge. This was one position group where they believe Adam Peters, the GM, should have done more. But that doesn't mean that front office leader won't add another weapon if he thinks it'll help. There doesn't seem to be much explosiveness to the pass rush aside from Frankie Louvu, a linebacker who can be highly effective in blitz packages. Washington's hopes largely depend on whether Dorrance Armstrong Jr. can take a major leap. If not, the Commanders have a big problem on their hands. Some options seeking alternative employment could help. DeMarcus Walker is one of them. This represents the sort of experienced short-term solution Peters has gone for more often than not the veteran pool in 2025. Walker spent the last 2 seasons with the Chicago Bears, gaining 7 sacks from 68% of the team's defensive snaps during that span. His pass rushing wasn't especially great last time around, but the former second-round pick out of Florida flashed tremendous production against the run. And guys, I would be okay with adding DeMarcus Walker. He's had some nice production as a rotational pass rusher in his career, but he's probably not my first choice. We talked about Ogbo Okoronkwo yesterday on the show. You guys can check out that video if you want to see my thoughts on him, but I kind of put Walker in the same kind of category as Okoronkwo, where I'd be okay if the Commanders ended up adding him, but I do think there's better options out there. You take a look at Walker's numbers over the last several seasons. His career year happened in 2022 with 7 sacks and 10 TFLs. Last year with the Chicago Bears in a rotational role, 3.5 sacks with 7 TFLs, 47 total tackles. So he's somebody that's been relatively productive. He hasn't been, a complete dud out there as a rotational pass rusher. I do think that he would be a pretty decent addition to the Commanders' edge rusher group, and you can make an argument he would be, one of the best, if not the best, pure pass rusher in this group right now. So got to keep him in mind. He's not my first option, but he's definitely an option I would be okay with at this point. Another guy that Dean Jones lists on his list of potential free agency targets here is Shaq Mason, the highly experienced right guard, formerly with the Houston Texans. This is what he had to say about Shaq Mason to the Washington Commanders. Sam Cosmi will miss most, if not all, of the 2025 campaign with a torn ACL. Brandon Coleman is shifting to the left guard spot, with Nick Allegretti expected to fill the right guard void. Tyler Biadasz is locked in at center, but there are some slight worries about the depth options behind them. That's where Shaq Mason comes in. The former Georgia Tech standout's 2-year spell with the Houston Texans ended this offseason, giving up 8 sacks in 2024. Wasn't ideal, but he's got bags of experience. He's also got proven chemistry with Tunsil, which is only going to help smooth the transition in this scenario. So, guys, I think Shaq Mason is completely cooked, and the point that he's got chemistry with Laremy Tunsil is kind of bullshit because Laremy Tunsil plays left tackle, Shaq Mason plays right guard, so they weren't really playing next to each other in the offensive line. So that's not really a non-factor for me. I think that, giving up 8 sacks last year, he was a big reason why C.J. Stroud was running for his life last year. I don't think that he provides really any value for the Washington Commanders other than veteran experience. And I think, with the guys, if you want to talk about chemistry, guys that, have been here can still win this job at right guard. Okay, Nick Allegretti started for this team at left guard last year. Andrew Wiley has been a former guard that transitioned to tackle. He's played right tackle the last several seasons here in Washington. He's going to have a chance to win the right guard job as well. Does look like Cosmi will be missing at least the first month or so, at least, of the 2025 NFL season. So Allegretti or Wiley or somebody else, maybe Trent Scott, somebody else like that, Nate Herbig, is going to have a chance to win this right guard job out of the gate. But right now, I would say Allegretti or Wiley are probably the 2 most likely options heading into week 1. So let me know down there in the comments section, who's more likely to be the starting right guard for the Washington Commanders in week 1? Type NA for Nick Allegretti or AW if you think it's Andrew Wiley. And now Gabe Davis is the next name that Dean Jones talks about in his article here, the wide receiver formerly with the Jacksonville Jaguars and Buffalo Bills. That's what Dean had to say about the wide receiver. The Commanders are dealing with some issues in their wide receiver room. Top of the list is Terry McLaurin, who opted to skip voluntary OTAs and mandatory minicamp in pursuit of a new deal that hasn't arrived yet. Hopefully something will get worked out before training camp with McLaurin. The Commanders are dealing – oh, never mind. So the next part of that is Michael Gallup is also missed time with a hamstring strain. Noah Brown was carted off at minicamp, but nothing was disclosed aside from the fact that he was getting an MRI. These situations are worth monitoring. It could even lead to the Commanders bringing in another wide receiver to raise competition. Someone like Gabe Davis could be a possibility, but only if Gallup and Brown are missing. The wide receiver was an underrated gem with the Buffalo Bills en route to securing a big money move to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Things didn't go nearly as well in the Florida Sunshine as he was cut after one underwhelming campaign. Now, guys, I don't really think that Gabe Davis necessarily wants to join the Washington Commanders, and frankly, I don't think the Commanders are looking to add at the wide receiver position. Now, obviously, Dean Jones is talking about if Noah Brown and or Michael Gallup aren't available, then you make a call to Gabe Davis. But even then, unless Noah Brown is out for a significant portion of the season, there's just really nowhere to fit Gabe Davis in here. I'm guessing Gabe wants to be a starter somewhere, and you got Terry McLaurin, you've got Deebo Samuel, and you got Noah Brown. Those are going to be your top 3 wide receivers in this rotation. So unless Noah Brown is going to miss significant time here, I don't think Gabe Davis even thinks about joining the Washington Commanders. And then we'll finish up here with 2 edge rushers. That's Jadeveon Clowney and Zadarius Smith. Most people that cover the Commanders have linked both of these guys to the Burgundy and Gold as potential edge rusher options for this team to consider. Dean Jones is no different. This is what he has to say about both of these men. Starting with Jadeveon Clowney, he says there aren't many remaining on the market, talking about edge rushers with more glowing credentials than Jadeveon Clowney. Clowney might not have reached the hype expected as a generational prospect coming out of college, but he's experienced and productive. The sack numbers are solid enough, and the veteran remains a huge asset against the run. Much will depend on the money involved, but there are far worse avenues the Commanders could go down. And guys, I've said it on the show before, I'm 100% down with adding Jadeveon Clowney to the Commanders' defense. He can be an every down player for this defense, and he's really thrived over the last couple years, specifically in 2023 when he was playing with the Baltimore Ravens, where he had 9.5 sacks that season. Last year on a lackluster Carolina Panthers team, had 5.5 sacks. He had 9 TFLs the last 2 years. So this is somebody that can be an impact player against the run, against the pass as well, especially if he's surrounded with talent on that defensive line, and that's what you have here in Washington up front. You got Deron Payne, you got Jerzon Newton, who was a second-round pick. So I do think that this would be a good fit for Jadeveon if he wants to come here, and I would completely be on board with this team adding him. When it comes to Zadarius Smith, Dean says Smith is a 3-time Pro Bowler with 69 career tackles. Nice. This would be nothing more than a short-term fix for the Commanders, but they are in win-now mode. Finding Band-Aid solutions capable of providing upgrades now is a lot better than nothing, with Washington's window for another Super Bowl firmly open. The Commanders have a real shot next season. Signing Smith wouldn't result in a monumental shift, but it would get them a lot closer. And I do tend to agree with Dean here, where I would once again be stoked if they added Zadarius Smith. And, he's somebody that was very productive in Aiden Hutchinson's absence last year in that Detroit defense. It really, kept the sails afloat there and kept the boats afloat there on defense in terms of the pass rush. And I still think that he can do the same thing here in Washington, even though he is getting older. But honestly, guys, it's not just Jadeveon Clowney. It's not just Zadarius Smith. And it's not just DeMarcus Walker. I think there's a lot of good edge options out there on the free agency market. You take a look at some of the guys that I would love to bring in here. Maybe not Matthew Judon. He is getting older, and he really did not play well for the Atlanta Falcons last year, but he's a big name. I still think Von Miller would be a great fit here in Washington. He wants to try and win a Super Bowl, one more before he retires. Washington, I think, is going to be a Super Bowl contender this year. We talked about Clowney and Smith, and Preston Smith is another guy that they could consider as well. Was a good player for the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, but because there's so many good free agency options still available, I think that gives Adam Peters and the Commanders front office a little bit of leeway here to feel comfortable waiting on a Trey Hendrickson situation and see how that thing goes. Hendrickson and the Bengals are negotiating and trying to figure out a long-term extension to keep last year's NFL sack leader in the jungle, but the negotiations haven't exactly gone well, and the Brown family is running out of cash to be able to fork over to Trey Hendrickson. So I'm looking at that situation as a very volatile one, and one that could end in a trade before the start of training camp. And the Commanders are sitting there saying, hey, if we got all these options at the edge rusher group, we're going to wait until this Hendrickson situation plays itself out. And if he stays in Cincinnati, we'll just sign one of these really good edge rushers that are still available in free agency. I think that's a smart strategy, and it keeps the door open to a potential Trey Hendrickson trade if things devolve there in Cincinnati. So predict it for me down there in the comments section. Will Washington add another edge rusher before the start of training camp? And if so, who do you think it's going to be? Do you think it's going to be Trey Hendrickson, Von Miller, Zadarius Smith, Jadeveon Clowney, somebody else? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. And that'll conclude today's edition of Commanders News and Rumors by Chat Sports. We got more Commanders content coming your way over the weekend, so if you guys want access to that, make sure you click that subscribe button. And until tomorrow, guys, hail to the Commanders.